Good morning, guys. This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough. Vanguard NE. I'm Norman James in LDN, along with my good friend Mike Augello, who's in Below. That's it for the Maple Leaf season. A loser to the Boston Bruins in Boston, 5-1, the Game 7 result. The Bees take the series 4-3. They are moving on to host the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Maple Leafs are headed back to Toronto, if they're not already there, to get their affairs in order, clean out their lockers, and host some dinner parties and host some golf events because their season is over. Michael, this has to be a quick one. We just wanted to give some of our OGs and converts an opportunity to decompress and break this thing down with us. So why don't you get it started?
Good morning, Norman. And I mean, anybody who's listened to the Convo has known that going into this series, looking at this series objectively, that I thought the Leafs were in trouble in a matchup against the Bruins. And to a point, they overachieved because they got to Game 7. They did, take the lead in the series 3 times. But the problems that we saw regarding this team during the regular season, going into the season, reared their ugly head in Game 7. Giveaways, bad defense, the concerns about Freddie Anderson in the Game 7, which have to now be, I think, sort of, it was illustrated last night with the bad first goal. And, I think he's like 0-4 in Game 7s with Anaheim and with Toronto, with the goals against of over 4. It's like a Bruce Boudreau of goaltending type of situation. Mike Babcock getting out-coached for the second time in the series by Bruce Cassidy. I mean, we will be doing convos the next couple of weeks to be able to fill the number or answer the number of questions and the problems that this team has, because it can't be done in just a quick one.
Well, the players are not only suspect. The head coach leaves plenty to be desired and certainly has spawned plenty of questions with his philosophy and methodology throughout the season and the series and Game 7. I'm a Babcock guy, but the way he chose to deploy his lines and his most talented players down the stretch, especially last night, he's on his own, man. And it bothers me because I want to see Mike Babcock be the head coach to help this team get to the Stanley Cup final and win it. But, man, some of his decisions are really tough to defend. Clearly issues with not having Austin Matthews out there, double, triple shifting in a desperate situation. You could look at the stats and say, all right, the best defenseman on the team played 27 minutes. Marner and Tavares, their best game since game, 3? They were out collectively almost 45 minutes. But Matthews, where was he down the stretch? And I'll tell you, this precipitates a struggle between the star player, the head coach, and the general manager over the summer months. I'm not sure where the result lands, Mike, and I'm not sure if it's favorable to the head coach.
Well, first of all, there's literally no chance that Mike Babcock is going to be fired. So I know that there are people. Yeah. I mean, I would be absolutely stunned. I don't think it's going to happen. And the people on Twitter can cry all they want about, his decisions. And I agree that some of his decisions were puzzling, but he's not going to be fired. But, that being said, any minute, any second that Freddie Gauthier was out there in the third period down by 2 goals was a wasted second. And if you're not double shifting Austin Matthews and you're not double shifting John Tavares, and, if they're hurt, I understand that, but you really had no tomorrow. You have to do that. You have to load up on your big horses and see if they can carry you to victory. And he refuses to do that. He rolls his 4 lines. He very rarely makes any changes. And I tweeted after the game, and I got a lot of response from it. Mike Babcock is a prisoner of his own limitations. He's a prisoner of his level of trust in a small group of players. I don't know what Patrick Marleau ended up with at the end of the night, but he was not effective at the end of that series. And the Leafs didn't have many options in terms of subbing in players where the Bruins did. But I mean, and that's partly at fault with management, but also the fact that if you have 3 or 4 extra forwards instead of 3 or 4 extra defensemen, is Mike Babcock going to use those guys? Probably not, because he didn't use Nick Patan 1 second in the series, and maybe he would have been a better option than Freddie Gauthier. But Babcock limits himself based on what he trusts and what he is willing to do, and we'll examine that going forward. But I think that limited this team, and really the Bruins were deeper, played a better playoff style, and the Leafs almost beat them. So the small things that were wrong and the small things that they failed on ended up costing them the first round.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough. Vanguard, NE.ca. Hanan Goldfarb, thank you so much for your support. We expected Mike Babcock to place limitations on his coaching ability and his capability of evolving, and I was fearful of them. They came back to bite the team and his team's fortunes in the end, Michael. Look, Babcock is taking a lot of heat, which he should. But this team is still not as good as the Boston Bruins. I know people think they are. They're not. If they were, they'd be going through to play the Columbus Blue Jackets in round 2. It's not all on the coach because he's the adult. There are a lot of issues with this lineup that still need to be resolved. And every time I see a list of people who should be on their way out because fans are upset, and I see Babcock all over it, and I see Hainsey, and I see Brown, and I see Gardner, which we knew Gardner was going to be gone anyway. It's not that I'm not going to start looking back on all the right things that we've pointed out, because we've pointed out so many right things. People like to do that stuff. Who cares? We're moving forward. But when I see all these lists and I don't see William Nylander's name on there, that list is trash to me. Okay? If Mike Babcock has to go, I better not see number 29 out there, Mike. Last few points, then we'll get back at this after locker cleanup.
I mean, there will be enough time to analyze who should go, who's not going to go. I'll just briefly say, Jake Gardner, I know that Morgan Riley was asked after the game, and it's too fresh. And, Gardner was -3 last night. I loved the stat that I think TSN stats came up with, that Gardner in game 7s in Boston, 2013, 2018, and last night is -10 in game 7 alone. I mean, that should be enough to basically pay for his ticket out of town. Not to say that they're going to have trouble replacing him, because they will, but you cannot pay that guy $6 million, $7 million a year, which he's probably going to get in free agency, with the players that you have to pay this summer. So,
but
he's going to probably
Calle Rosen, you have Timothy Liljegren, and you have Rasmus Sandin coming up through the pipeline. It's amazing. We everybody wants Sheldon Keefe to come up like he's going to be the answer. Remember Dallas Eakins? A lot of the analytics people and those who think that youth and what's coming is better than what's here don't want to bring up these guys. They don't want to bring up Dallas Eakins, because Dallas Eakins was the boy wonder. He was the one who was going to do it all. So we talk about having Sheldon Keefe come in and somehow igniting William Nylander. Well, what about all of these kids? What about all of these kids who are actually more important than the head coach, in my opinion, who are knocking at the door? So we talk about Gardner. 51 played his last game with the Maple Leafs, and I'm sad that it ended that way, Michael. I'm really sad, but let's not even bring him up as a possibility going forward. If that's the case, then what's Kyle Dubas doing around here? Because that's a terrible judgment on his part if he were to bring him back, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, the question is, when you mentioned 3 names who play with the Marlies or was called up late in the season in the case of Rosen, will the head coach play them? Because he didn't, and I'm not putting Nick Patan in the same position, but we know with young players, the head coach has a level of trust problem with some.
Well, Hainsey's gone too, right?
Maybe. I mean, that's up to the general manager. Will Kyle, and this is how Kyle Dubas, at least last year, managed this team. How do you manage your head coach? Well, you don't give him his toys. He took away Leo Komarov. He took away Roman Polak. He took away a couple other players. I mean, Bozak, they were never going to sign because he was going to be a free agent and he would cost too much money and they had somebody to replace him. But you take away his toys. So this year, Ron Hainsey might be gone. Patrick Marleau may retire. Jake Gardner may be gone. If you do that, then he has no other choice but to play the best of what's left or what.
Mike, and you know this. Mike Babcock, a veteran coach, as decorated as he is not going to sit Ron Hainsey and Patrick Marleau and his veterans in favor of a bunch of young and dumb kids who are hungry for God knows what. He's not going to do it. There is a level of respect there that is detrimental. And it's unfortunate, but there's a hierarchical process here that Mike Babcock is not going to go against no matter what. So clearing out some of the old guys based on attrition, retirement, free agency, and bringing in new guys is something Mike Babcock is just going to have to deal with. The problem there, and we've got to wrap up because the kids are up and they're devastated, by the way. Try being a parent explaining to your son why the Bruins are continually better than the Maple Leafs. He actually blamed the head coach. But you know, the thing is here, okay? If Kyle Dubas wants to get rid of Mike Babcock, bring in Sheldon Keefe, get rid of the veterans, bring in the young players. The Leafs aren't winning a Stanley Cup next year. Actually, they might regress. That is the conundrum here. Being able to fill spots with young players who are seething and ready to go, but also add veteran presence, add experience, improve your team overall so that you can get past Boston or whomever in the first round and start marching towards a Stanley Cup. Because I'll tell you what, John Tavares isn't getting any younger, and these guys like Matthews and Marner are going to be entering their prime, and they want to win championships. Mike, respond to that. Last word to you. We got to go.
Over the next few months, the decisions that Kyle Dubas will make in terms of getting Mitch Marner re-signed and the decisions on players going forward, like Nylander, like Kadri, are going to be the key. I mean, the core will not be changed. I am convinced Mitch Marner will not sign an offer sheet. The Leafs will pay him, but there are going to be changes, and how dramatic they are. They're not going to alter the core, but there are going to be different secondary players on this team, and that will determine whether next year is a sort of a readjustment year or a year where they could actually thrive and be improved. We will see.
Mike Babcock doesn't need to go to Arizona for a visit to smooth things over this summer. He needs to stay and go to the general manager's office, lock the damn door, and get on the same page. Because the next season to come will be Mike Babcock's final season with the Maple Leafs if it resembles what we just witnessed. Michael, you are the best in the business. It's an honor to do the Leafs Convo with you. We have many more to come. Leafs Converts, TLC OGs, we believe in you. Thanks for having our back. We're going to do this again real soon. Michael, take it easy, buddy.
Thanks, Norman.
We would like to thank Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, title sponsor of the Leafs Convo, demonstrating passion for the industry and a superior level of excellence in selling, leasing, and marketing your property. Vanguard Northeast Realty.